What's up, everybody? It's the Orange Bloods Modcast here on Orange Bloods Live. I'm Jeff Ketchum. It's been a while since I've been on one of these, joined by Cody Carpentier, Jason Sucamil, and Alex Dunlap. Do us a solid, hit that thumbs up button, like, comment, subscribe to the page, jump into the Specs chat it up, shoot us some super chats. We've got all kinds of stuff that we're going to get into from a topic standpoint. And yes, we're saying there's a show today. We're short, Chris Bailey. Don't be a smartass. But yeah, we are. There's a show today. Sorry about yesterday. Life kind of happened. This show brought to you by the guys over at Daily and Black. If you're having issues with, natural disasters, there's a big rain thing in Austin. And if you're having issues with the companies and you need a lawyer, Daily and Black, they're award-winning. They raise money for Texas baseball on Orange Bloods for the NIL. They are burnt orange through and through, and they will help you get back what's been potentially taken from you on the insurance side with regards to like major damages and storms and stuff like that. Like literally, they're the people that you call. They will sort it out for you. Some of the best people in Houston. Fellas, headlines for the day that we'll get into to varying degrees. Texas softball team. They're in the national championship series against Texas Tech. Wild that those two teams are playing for the national championship in Texas's first year in the SEC. Congratulations to that team. Both of those teams, though, go through Oklahoma to get there. The four-time reigning national champions. Should be fun. Texas got a kicker commit. And then over on the baseball side of things, Zach's already got the offseason thread going on Orange Bloods. The baseball team's already had 3 transfers occur. Exit interviews are taking place. Jonah Williams is on his way to football. There's a lot of stuff happening on the baseball front, maybe even more active and busy because the season is over. So a lot of things going on. But the thing we're leading with today, with all due respect to the stories of the day, the things that are going on, ESPN released its first set of FPI rankings, their computer rankings, going into the 2025 season. I'm going to pull these up in just a second. The Longhorns are a preseason number 1, fellas. Check this out. ESPN's FBI top 25 rankings. Texas 1, Georgia 2, Bama 3rd, Ohio State 4. Before we go any further, what's interesting about that top 4 is those are the top 4 teams in my super blue chip rankings, the combined super blue chip rankings, the consensus super blue chip rankings, if you will. They are the 4 teams in college football. My dog agrees that I will have to thank my wife for letting the dogs out while the guys are trying to fix the air conditioning. But the 4 teams with the biggest talent advantages in college football are the preseason number 4. The team that's number 5 on that list in terms of elite of the elite talents, Oregon at number 6. So A&M at 8. I think it is, and Jason, and I'll double check that. I literally stole.
I think I'm looking at FPI National Championship odds. It must be something different, Catch. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is literally the first set of ESPN's computer rankings.
Okay. For
the 2025 season. And I think the thing, fellas, and I'll pull this down in a section. I want everybody to just be able to take a good look at, I think Texas plays 5 teams. So they play on the road, number 2, Georgia. They play on the road, number 4, Ohio State. They play at home, number 8, A&M. They play where are the Gators? There's no Gators. No, the Gators are 18. So they play 2 and 4 and 18 on the road, 16 on a neutral site, and 8 and 22 at home. That's actually a really tough schedule. That's 6 teams in the top 22 that they say Texas is playing on the schedule. 3 in the top 8, 2 of the top 4 on the road. Also interesting as I set this thing up, what's also really interesting is that Texas, according to the FBI rankings, and Alex, I want to go to you first on this. Texas is the number 1 team in the country projected offensive FPI and they're the number one team on the defensive FPI. So they're the number one FBI team in the country, and the ESPN. I don't know why that just happened. The computer's being a little weird with me today. Let's see if it'll come down. There we go. Texas preseason number one FPI on both sides of the football, which makes them, from an FPI standpoint, the obvious choice as a preseason number one.
I'm no Dustin McComas here. He would talk so much about this FPI, and can you tell me a little bit? I'm surprised by it. I don't know exactly what goes into this, but to see A&M at 8 and I think Oklahoma at 16 is super interesting. I think to see Tennessee ahead of LSU doesn't make much sense to me. I guess with A&M, they are going to have. We did have at the SEC league meetings. Mike Elko talking about them maybe having 12 guys drafted this year and stuff like that. But as far as FPI, do they take into account returning talent, returning production? What do you know what goes into that calculation mainly?
No.
Okay.
The ESPN says true strength on net point scale, expected point margin versus average opponents on neutral field.
Okay. I find these rankings seem weird. These rankings seem weird to me. It's like, what kind of Carson Beck are we going to see for Miami? I just think LSU. Man, LSU seems kind of low, and OU.
But Alex, the thing about A&M is that they are. God, I have to go back and look at my rankings, but I think they're about 8th in the country in my super blue chip rankings with regards to elite high-end talent that's on their roster. Whatever we think about what our eyeballs tell us from having watched that team, on paper, they've got one of the top 10 rosters in college football.
Alex, real quick, says projected results are based on 20,000 simulations of the rest of the season. So they run simulated games, and then based on the score outcomes, that's how they come up with the FPI.
So it's a sim. Okay, so if we just consider, so all you hear about Texas is yada yada yada, easiest SEC schedule, right? Stuff like this. People point to Florida and they say, look at the murderer's row that Florida gets. And Florida, because they're going to have to play. So Florida plays LSU, who is 12. They play Miami, who was on here at 9. They play Texas, who's on here at 1. Texas A&M, who's on here at 8. They play Georgia, who's on here at 2. Ole Miss, who's on here at 13. Tennessee, who's on here at 10. And Florida State, I guess, is not on there. So even though with Texas, Catch, you just reeled off like 6 of these teams that that Texas is going to have to play. Was it 6 that Texas is going to have to play on this list?
Georgia, Ohio State,
Florida, Arkansas.
Yeah.
Arkansas.
Arkansas,
Florida. And
I mean, doesn't that seem a little out of pocket to you guys? Well, I think that, whenever, the narrative that Texas, had the benefit of this easy schedule for their first 2 seasons in the SEC. I'm not sure, just based on this FPI, man, I'm not sure that it's that much, people talk about Florida. It's just a murderer's row. It's like Texas, if you look at this, kind of faces a similar murderer's row.
I just think it's fascinating. I mean, it's all arch when you look at, if Texas is the projected number 1 offense in the country. I don't know. I don't know where. I don't even know. I have no idea where that's coming from.
I wish I could see that screen where you have it broken up offense and defense. I don't see that, but I do see, Texas is number 1. It's not. I mean, they're at 28.5. Georgia's number 2, a full 2 points behind them. So it's not like a fraction of a point that they have Texas as number 1 either. I mean,
I'm going to pull it up, Jason. You keep talking, and I'll have this graphic loaded with the offense and defenses here in just a sec.
They've got Texas at 28.5. That's the point total, number 1. Georgia 26.6. Alabama number 3. You go down to 24.2. Then Alabama and Ohio State are neck and neck there. But and then Penn State at number 5 is at 21.5. So there's a full 7 points, 25% of the grading scale below where Texas is at. So, Texas is a full 2 point, or I guess 1.9 point advantage over Georgia for that number 1 spot. So not only does ESPN have Texas number 1, I mean, they've got a pretty clear number 1. One thing I've noticed about FPI, just kind of following it loosely over the years, it's always a little wacky at the beginning of the year, and it kind of corrects itself as the season goes on, which makes sense, I guess, as some teams struggle, or, teams you think will be good aren't quite as good. But the early season stuff, I always take it with a bit of a grain of salt.
The one thing I read from ESPN just a second ago, when trying to explain the FPI, they took into account offense, defense, and special teams with values representing points per game. So a year ago, Georgia was number 1 at 26.8. So that means Georgia was rated nearly 26.8 points better than the average team in the FBS. So that means Texas is 28.5 points better than the average team.
On a neutral field, yeah.
On a neutral field, correct. Last year, the top team was Georgia, like I said, 26.8, Oregon 24.5, Texas was third, 22.9, with Ohio State 22.2. Ohio State obviously won the championship. The year before, Michigan was 6th at 21.4. They won the championship, and Texas was 21.9. The leader that year was 31.5, being Ohio State.
Yeah, I don't see how A&M's 17.9 points better than the average team on a neutral field with their quarterback situation.
I think it goes to the talent aspect that Ketch talks about with this.
Yeah, but I mean, we don't have a quarterback. That's a pretty big equalizer that, levels the playing field a little bit. So they got A&M. What did I see? A&M projected at 8.1 to 4.1, 4.1 to 8.1 wins. Well, that's a big discrepancy. Now that can't be right, because they got Texas. Was projected 1 loss. They got Texas 10.4-2.1.
Yeah, so 10-2, and then A&M 8-4. The 0.1 is just like you said, 20,000 projections. So it can't be 8.0 or 8.5. It has to just kind of be probably 0.91 or some crap like that.
It's crazy to me that the FPI, like Ketchum was saying, like the FPI, like, if Texas fans are worried about replacing 4 out of 5 of the offensive linemen from last year's group that was like second in Joe Moore Award voting, if they're worried about a new quarterback, if they're worried about losing, one first round receiver and one receiver that might have gone a lot higher if not for the off field stuff, losing a guy like Gunnar Helm, like a lot of turnover. Sark talks about it. It's like, it's not necessarily a young team, but it's a lot of new faces. If Texas fans are worried about it, I think you should feel good to know that these wacky computer simulations, they don't feel too bad about what Texas is going to be bringing back.
84% chance to make the playoffs, Alex. So,
gosh,
which is pretty remarkable. I think you wrote about it.
Yeah, well, you definitely feel 8. Yeah, we'll catch
think about all the talent they're having to replace on offense. Listen, and we would all pick Texas to make the playoffs, right? But all the talent they're having to replace on offense, 84%, that's a pretty high number.
I don't think there's an 85% chance they make the playoffs. Because look,
84.
What would you peg it at?
Look, here's the thing. This is what it comes down to. They play 3, I think, top 10 teams on the road. If they were to lose 2 of the 3, which isn't crazy talk, let's say they lose at Ohio State and at Georgia. That's not – those could be close losses, and both of those things would occur. The only thing that then keeps them out of the playoffs is a single slip up anywhere else in the other 9 games.
Yeah, 84 seems high to me.
I just feel like I think the scenarios, because the schedule – on paper is as difficult as it is, I don't think there's a lot of margin of error for Texas. They have to win at least one of those 3 games on the road, which I think they will do, but that's easier said than done. Going into Columbus and winning that game, it's like, you got to win one of those types of games, at least one. I think they will, but they could lose 2 and still find a way to not make the playoffs. They could lose all 4. Like
I think a two-loss Texas team makes the playoff. I think
it will. But
100%.
what I'm saying is 2 losses then means you have no margin of error
going into
anywhere
A&M.
else on the schedule against any other team that you play. And while we all think that Texas will win all of those games, Alabama would have said going into last year, "Oh, we'll win the Vanderbilt game. That's a win." And sometimes
same with Oklahoma, right? Yeah, but do you think? But all right, but this is kind of interesting to me. Ketchum, are you under the impression that a 3-loss team is just completely out? It's just you're done. There's no chance.
No, but I mean, you put yourself in. Probably you can't control your destiny.
Yeah, right. It's
you know
up
what I
to
mean. Like
committee.
It will happen at some point, but boy, there will be a huge cry when it does happen, and it'll probably be a Texas or a Georgia or an Alabama or somebody like that gets the benefit of the doubt when it's all said and done. Got a super chat from Jay Lee, $5. Thank you, Jay Lee. Always appreciate it. With all the crying about our schedule this year and last, do you think we get screwed when the new schedule comes out just to appease all the crybabies? I don't, Jay. No. They don't want to kill the golden goose.
Mm-hmm.
They don't.
I mean, I don't think whenever they put these schedules together, they were thinking to themselves, all right, how are we gonna give Texas the easy schedule? Like we just read off the schedule. Texas is playing the number 2 and the number 4 team on this list. They're playing the number 8 team on this list.
It's not Texas's fault that Oklahoma, Arkansas, and A&M are pretty mediocre. I mean, that's just.
Yeah, but Arkansas is top 25. Arkansas is 22 on this list.
Okay, well, pretty mediocre, I guess. Fine.
OU is 16 on this list.
I'm not buying that for a second, but okay.
Hey, but this is the opportunity. You get to sit here and say, well, the schedule's tough now. Arkansas, Oklahoma, it's tough.
Yeah.
It look a lot different in November.
And guys, I think the real conversation that I wanted to have coming out of this data dump from ESPN, what the hell what are we going to do with expectations with this team? Because I feel like nationally, I don't know how to tell the fan base to calm down. Like, how do you tell a fan base to calm down and that, hey, there are losable games on the schedule. It's a tough schedule. It's a team that's got to grow up a little bit. Arch Manning's never made a career start on the road, never made a career start against a ranked team. Like, there are all these things that this Texas team still has to do, and yet someone can turn around and go, hey, Catch, but Texas has the number 1 best projected offense and defense in the country. So shut up. What do you know? And I don't know what to tell a person who says, Catch, why are you telling me to slow down? Everything that I read in the offseason is telling me to speed up.
I just look at this and I think I look at Georgia, and I'd be interested to hear what you guys think with just like, Gunnar Stockton and they lose in the draft, like guys like what on the defense, Michael Williams and Jalen Walker and I can't believe I'm forgetting is the safety Starks.
Yep.
Like Malachi Starks, like they lost a lot. They lost Trevor Etienne. Arian Smith was no good, but he was kind of their top wide receiver who's gone. I wonder.
Alex, Texas lost 7 drafted guys on their own offense.
Yeah, well, like I said, like I talked about earlier, it's just interesting to me how they project the players who are going to be filling in for these losses. I mean, clearly Texas had massive losses in the NFL draft. Anytime you get 12 guys drafted, you're gonna whatever it was.
Alex, it's crazy. The 1, 2, 3, 4 top 5 offenses projected all are replacing quarterbacks. Penn State, LSU, Clemson, they all return quarterbacks. Oregon breaks in a new quarterback. Notre Dame breaks in a new quarterback. I don't know that A&M fully even knows what the hell they're doing at quarterback. I guess it's Marcel Reed, but who knows?
Alabama gets a new quarterback.
Yeah, no, the whole top 5. Texas, Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Miami, all of them. So interesting that all of those offense because Texas and Georgia, both massive amounts of turnover. and they're all getting massive amounts of benefit of the doubt.
Look, I'm seeing in the chat over here, we have a super chat to get to, and Vivek B is saying, Catch, you're part of the problem here. He's saying in the chat that that Catch, you're part of the issue. You're getting the team overhyped, saying Arch will be a Heisman finalist. That basically means Texas will be an elite team. By Catch and being part of the issue, do you mean the casinos and the sports books that build all the awesome that pay for all the awesome casinos out there in Las Vegas? Because Arch is, last I checked, isn't Arch the top odds to win the Heisman this year? It's not.
Isn't that some of that, Alex? That's like saying like the Longhorns and the Yankees and the Cowboys always get a little bit of a benefit of the doubt because they know people are going to bet on those. That's kind of the, and I'm not saying Arch shouldn't be a favorite, but I think probably his name probably bumps up his odds a little bit.
He's still the number one betting favorite in the Heisman odds right now.
Yeah. So it's not Catch. It's not Catch. I mean, Catch might be agreeing with them, but it's not him causing.
But in general, look, I think is that either Arch or DJ Lagway will be first team all SEC quarterback. And typically, first team all SEC quarterbacks. It doesn't happen every year, but typically first team all SEC quarterbacks end up going to New York. And sometimes more than one SEC quarterback goes to New York. So, that's what I think of. I have not said I think Arch is going to win the Heisman, which at this point would put me against the odds in Vegas. But yeah, I think there's a good chance that he gets there. I think Texas is probably a 10-2 type team right now, but I think they could be a 10-2 type team that nobody wants to play in December a lot. Like nobody wanted Ohio State. At the end of the year, everybody was like, oh, Ohio State lost to Michigan. Isn't that funny? Oh, wait, that's not going to knock them out of the playoffs? Ugh. Hope they don't end up on our side of the bracket. That's who Ohio State became. It was all fun and games when they lost to Michigan, but nobody wants to get to December and January and play Texas, Ohio State, and Georgia specifically. Alabama gets grandfathered into that because their talent base is technically on the level of those other three schools, even if it doesn't quite feel like it after the loss of Saban, but there's still mega talent in that program. But I don't know. I'm not predicting the thing is, like, I reject that because I am saying I don't think Texas is going to win the national championship this year. I've said that repeatedly. The thing that I've also said, though, is I can't pick a team that I think has better odds. So I'll take the field versus Texas.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
I understand conceptually why Texas right now is the number one team because all of these other teams have massive question marks as well. And all things being considered, I'd take Arch Manning over the kid at Georgia, Gunnar Stockton. And I would take, and I think Julian Sayin is actually going to get there, but not this year. And so, I think that Texas is just really positioned well, but I don't think they're going to sweep those games on the road, the three that will ultimately all be top 10 teams. That feels far-fetched. But I think in the playoffs, nobody's going to want to play Texas. Period.
That Julian Sayin Arch matchup is going to be fun to watch because I don't know how much people remember this. It hadn't really been talked about. If Arch Manning wasn't at Texas, Julian Sayin's probably Texas' starting quarterback this year. He was going to come to Texas. And then as soon as Arch committed, he's like, all right, Texas is out. He went to Alabama, right? And then
I forgot that. I forgot about that.
I really hadn't thought about it that much. But, I mean, I wouldn't say it was a lock, but, I mean, I feel pretty strongly that he would have been a Texas Longhorn and probably would be the Texas starter right now. So that first game.
A real sliding doors moment there.
Yeah. No, for sure. And it's like you look and see what could have been. I think we had like a $20 super chat. Yeah. So we had a super chat from Oscar Elizondo. Yeah, Thank you, Oscar.
I was bringing it up, Alex, for $19.99. I get why it's crazy talk. However, what team isn't thinking if we lose 3, we may miss the playoffs, or we need to replace this and that? Maybe 1 is too much, but who is in a better situation than Texas? Oscar, nobody.
Nobody because of Arch. Yeah.
And look, when you look at a year ago, when you looked at my consensus super blue chip rankings, Ohio State and Georgia were separate from, ultimately, there was a tier where they were above Texas and Georgia by almost half the numbers. They were sitting on about 30, and Texas is sitting below 20. And there was a real gap. This year, the gap between Georgia at number 1, Ohio State at number 2, Texas and Alabama at number 3 is like 4 or 5. Like, the gap's considerable. I felt like when we watched Ohio State and Texas play last year, my eyeballs could see they had a few more guys. That was a difference between those two teams. Both teams had a bunch of drafted guys. They had just a few more of their drafted guys weren't just drafted guys. They were like maybe second day guys instead of day 3 guys. And they were just a little more talented. That gap is closed. Texas has, I think, a massive quarterback advantage over everybody else. Oscar, it's not crazy talk. The question I'm asking the panel, how do we begin to control the talk? We've never entered a season, and Jason and I have been working together for a long time. Only in 2005 and 2009 did Texas enter a season where it was like, yep, national championship, or something went wrong. That's not been a reality that Texas has lived in, where 85% chance they're in the playoffs and number 1 team in the country on both sides of the ball going into the season. There's no way to tame the expectations. We've reached a point, and this is where I think low key, we're going to say the quiet thing out loud, Jason. If Texas doesn't get past the semifinals of the playoffs, there will be some Texas grumbling of,
yeah,
it's what Ryan Day experienced at Ohio State. It's right now. Steve Sarkisian's in. I get an extension because I've gone 2 years in a row and my stock's on a high. Eventually, though, it's like, what have you done for me lately? And then that really impressive thing is a little bit less impressive when you never quite take the next step. That's where they are. If you enter this, and we saw this with Texas baseball. By the way, guys, don't arrest me. I'm only metaphorically going to kill my wife later. Matter of fact, I may not wait. I may say what I'm about to say and then go kill somebody. Maybe our AC guys, who knows? This is the first season that we're going to enter where even making a national semifinals, I don't think is going to be deemed as a success. That is a crazy bar. That's the Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State bar. This is the first year that Texas is going to live in that level of success tiers, where I'm telling you, man, there are going to be people after the season, should they go out in a semifinal game, who are going to be like, this is bullshit. This is what we did last year. Sark gets to these games and then he can't win them. And it's like, then the only thing that gets talked about is the last game every year. And I'm just saying, before we get into the first of these seasons, fellas, buckle up. This is when I always tell the story in 2001. Chris Sims is playing Colorado at home. I think they won that game like 45-7 or 42-10, or all I know is Texas was up by 5 scores in the fourth quarter. And there was a guy on the sideline in Section 8 just berating Sims. And I can remember like turning around to this guy and I'm like, man, they're up by 5 touchdowns. Like, what are you upset about? Oh, we didn't play well today. We're not playing to the standard. And it's like, and I remember then I was like, oh, you can't be happy up 35? That's where we're at as a program. The performances are going to be judged forevermore on, is that good enough to win a national championship? And what I think is kind of interesting about that, I got myself in trouble with the fan base at times last year for looking at the team that way. That's the prism through which I saw Quinn Ewers. Every game, it was like, well, yeah, no, they beat Texas A&M, so that's good. But in a couple of weeks, they won't be able to play like that as an offense. They have to get more. That's not good enough. I think I will be joined this year with every performance being judged by, is that going to be good enough to win games in January? It can be not the most enjoyable experience.
I thought that earlier when we first came on the air, like this almost, and I don't know how much people are going to pay attention to FPI stuff, but these kind of rankings, especially when you say Texas is number one offense, number one defense, that does put a little bit more pressure on Sark, right? Because if you don't go out and, get past the semifinals this year, some people, fair or not, will consider it a failure, right? I mean, what is the bar? Do they have to make the college football championship game this year? Otherwise, this is year 3. If they go to the semifinals and lose, or God forbid, lose before that, people will say, okay, he's acquired all this talent, and you already hear all the NIL talk about Texas and these crazy numbers or whatever. People are going to say, okay, he's not able to take that next step. He's not maximizing these opportunities. He can't win the big game when it really matters. I mean, fair or not, I don't think it's fair. I mean, hell, he's built this program up, to a place where it hasn't been in a long, long time since Mac's heyday. But you will start to hear those cries in these kinds of rankings. And, you see the splashed on the ESPN headlines, Texas number 1 ranked FPI. That does almost in a weird kind of way put a little bit more pressure on Sark to get this thing past where it's been the last 2 years.
Look, I think we see in the chat that Jared Tetley saying if we don't win the national championship, this season's a failure. So obviously the expectations are high. I don't know. To me, I can't get myself to where I say Texas. I mean, getting those semifinals is hard. Like, do you guys remember back to the Arizona State game?
Yeah,
I mean, exactly. Getting to those semifinals is not hard. Those are good teams. But I guess they've been there 2 years in a row. I mean, you want them to take.
For the record, this ESPN thing has Texas at 24.1% to win the national title, so slightly less than 1 in 4, right? So whoever posted that is like, you're basically saying that there's a 76% chance it doesn't happen. So I don't know that I'd go that far.
Those look like my 4-star numbers that get drafted, Jason.
Yeah, so you're still getting a little bit of a lottery ticket if they win the national championship there.
Saying they're 24%. Is my math wrong in saying they're 24% to get the national championship? It basically implies they're 50-50. They're a coin flip to get to the semis.
It doesn't have semis. It says 24.1 to win the national championship, 37.7 to make.
So that would imply 70. No, that can't imply 70% to make the semis.
I'd say that's probably about right. 84% to make the playoffs, 38%. Yeah. I'm rounding up here to make the championship game.
Dude, that's putting that's putting too much on them. It is. I don't care if they've been there the last 2 years. 70% to make the semis. That's putting too much on them. And I think they're going to be a good team. I'm not as concerned about some of the concerns that people have. I have concerns about this team that other people don't seem to have. But it's 70% to the semis. If that's right, I think that's what that means.
Well, we're guessing on that, but yeah, 38% to make the national championship game. So.
Catch, who are your 1, 2, and 3 for your blue chips?
Jason, assuming that they're somewhere around a 3-point favorite, 2.5 point favorite to a 2.5 point dog in the game that would be the game coming into the semis, that would basically make it a 50-50, right? So what you do is you would just double that. I think that math is correct. If you're
making my head hurt,
Alex, that it's going to be if you're baking in the fact that it's going to be kind of a coin flip game to get into it, right? And so it's like I think that's putting too much on them. But who knows? These computers might know more than me.
Catch,
Cody?
is Texas, Georgia, and Ohio State your 1, 2, 3?
No. It's
For-
Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Texas and Bama are tied at 3, and Oregon has 5.
Okay, so your top. Okay, so those are the top 4. You add Oregon in, they're 6th, right? And the tier is clearly Texas, Georgia, Bama, Ohio State. As far as the FPI goes, Texas a touchdown better than Penn State, who's 5th. So there's kind of a tier there. And in that group, you talk about the blue chips. You just laid out the numbers for that. Drafted prospects this last year, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, all north of a dozen. It's just, I think the whole thing here is it's pretty clear that Texas is just now on the Mount Rushmore going forward, at least. They've made it to semifinals back-to-back years. Sure, the expectation is you got to win the national championship. Archer's the quarterback. He's the golden son. This has been what's been in the cake for the last couple of years. But when you look at the numbers and how Texas goes from being 21 FPI 2 years ago, 10 points to the negative of Ohio State, who was number 1 overall, and 10 points inferior, to now being a touchdown better than everybody past the top 4, is the defense has gained 16 points per game, right? They give up 31 points per game 4 years ago, all the way down to 15 this last year. Like, this defense is going to return quite a few players that I think we can all agree that the back end is strong, the edge is strong, linebackers are strong. Like, I think everybody loses prospects, right? All 3 of these teams have lost north of a dozen guys, including their quarterbacks. And yeah, Arch is going to get a little bit of heat in that. But even if you look back to like Joe Burrow and CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow played 39 pass attempts at Ohio State those 2 years before he goes to LSU. The first year at LSU, he was fine, right? They went 8-3, 9-3, lost to A&M in the second to last game of the season, but he wasn't the 2019, 2020 prolific Joe Burrow, which I think a lot of people maybe are kind of expecting out of Arch. We could see that. We could see a 9-3, 9-4, 2018 Joe Burrow, or that CJ Stroud that came in 2021, and they lost a couple games. They lost to Oregon. They lost to Michigan, and he was still Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year, still 4th in Heisman in 2021. Very good, but not quite great. Like, I think just the nature of, and this is from someone that obviously hasn't covered Texas nearly as long as any of you 3, and this is going to be more of like an outside view looking in, is I would see this year as more of like a bridge. I don't view it as Texas is just the expectation is national champion, but I can see, just being on Orange Bloods, of course, that the expectation is national championship, because it should be, and it is at Texas, and it's the NIL era and all this different stuff and where the program is at. That should be the expectation. But I don't think it's a failure if you make the playoffs and win a game. If you don't make the playoffs, of course that's a failure. If you make the playoffs and get bounced in the first round, or you do something like the baseball team did, that's a failure. I don't think making the playoffs and winning a game, like, I think when you look at it from an NFL perspective, which Sark has done a lot in the last year, and talking about how the game transitions, and there's a lot more comparable things to the NFL, OTAs, free agency, etc. It's like, what do a lot of teams in the NFL say? It's like, once you get to the tournament, it's all things are fair game. Like, you just want to get to the tournament.
Got to get there, man. You hear these coaches say it over and over.
You guys also know that if a coach goes 5 years, 4 years, and isn't getting over a certain hump, that becomes, then it's less you're a good coach who gets his team into the final 8 every year, and you become the guy that's not getting them.
Are you saying fire Mike Tomlin? Because I agree.
I was going to say.
No, and it's like, and we've seen this at Texas. Just like you want to get Texas
Andy
fans
Reid,
or give them PTSD. Remind them of what the importance that Mac Brown put on 10 wins, and it was like there was a certain point in time where it's like, dude, we don't care about these 10 wins anymore. Like we want you to beat Bob Stoops and win Big 12 championships. And we want you to, you know what I'm saying? Like 10 wins is great. Like we hadn't had that for a long time before. Like I'm kind of like Cody compared to you guys. I don't really know Texas football before Mac Brown because I didn't grow up in a family that was fans of Texas football. And I wasn't one until I went to college there. Right. So I know Mac Brown forward. And I know that even during the time that I was in college, during Mac's early years, right, I'd be like, what's all this 10-win talk from this guy? Why can't he beat Stoops? You know what I mean? Like that was the way I felt about stuff. So I agree with Ketchum's point. It's like you forget the fact that, you know, before this guy got here, you would have died for 10 wins every year.
Hey,
and just
Alex,
a chance. Yeah.
When I started as a student at Texas, I've told this story before, but I want you to hear it because I think you'll appreciate it. 10-win seasons were far and few between. I guess there had been one between 1984 and 2000.
Oh, God, what a brutal stretch.
They had like the 1990 year. But anyway, when I was a student, and so my first year is 94, and that's the Rice. Let me tell you how low things were and how far away they were from consecutive seasons with 10 wins where they were getting tired of 10 wins.
Mm-hmm.
We had a guy that worked in the SID office who faxed over a fire DeLoss Dodds fax to the athletic director's office from the SID office.
Oh, my God.
So they came over from the AD office, and basically there was like an inquisition into, like, I got interviewed. It was like an FBI like sting, you know. It was like they're holding a lamp. Where were you at 4:00 on Monday afternoon? Because I was like one of the only people that was in the office. But I was a freshman. It was a guy who was like a senior, and he wrote this like fire DeLoss Dodds like a mission statement and faxed it from the SID office and lost his job.
On purpose, or was this an accident? Was he supposed to send it to a friend, but he sent it to the ADs? Like, did he want to just? He's just like,
I don't think it occurred to him that there'd be a tracking number that they would recognize. That they were like, wait a minute, 512471 prefix. That's us. That's us.
God. Yeah, that's one of the. Okay.
Sometimes you'll get someone will call on a cell phone and be like, oh, 512-525, and you'll be like, oh, I know a few people that have that little 525 prefix, right? This is one where like 471, whatever those next four numbers, that's a UT system phone number. And yeah, that guy got tracked down in like a matter of minutes. They were in the office. Who's in the office right now? Who has access to the fax machine? Trust me.
Yeah.
But you know what the difference of that is? You were in college, like that was 95. So this was less than a decade later when you would have first got into college. So the
Right.
difference between faxes being sent from Texas athletic offices to other offices demanding that bosses get fired, and this is kind of boring, winning 10 games in a row. It took virtually no time for that to occur. It wasn't Texas won 10 games in a row for a decade, and that got old. That got old the moment Chris Sims melted down in Texas Stadium with the Big 12 championship.
Oh, don't remind me of that.
And the national championship game bid on the line. That was the moment. That and the combination of Oklahoma winning the national championship the year before in 2000. And suddenly, Mac, don't tell us about 10-win seasons.
Yeah, talk about PTSD, man. You bring up that Chris Sims game at the Cowboys Stadium. Goodness gracious. I was there for that. It was brutal.
Were you a student at that point?
Don't remember if I was a student or whether I was just out of college.
It was 2001, November.
Oh, yeah,
2001.
I was a student.
Did you call Chris Sims's number?
No, dude. No, man. I've never been like that. No way, dude. That's just next level.
Did you know anybody that called Chris Sims?
No, man. I don't think I'd be like, that's the modern day equivalent. That's like even worse than what they do when they tweet at guys now. No, man. I wouldn't want to be friends with somebody who acted like that. Man.
I know somebody that was a poster on Orange Bloods that in the early days of Orange Bloods, his claim to fame was he claims he was the one that gave out Chris Sims's phone number.
Oh,
The claim to fame.
Claim to infamy.
Yeah, basically.
I will admit that I was super tilted at Chris Sims leaving that football game.
It was a guy who was friends with another quarterback on the team, not Major, by the way, not Major, and that guy just didn't like Chris. Anyway, I think Jason would know who it is if it's been a long, the guy hasn't posted on Orange Bloods in a long time. So maybe Jason would or wouldn't remember, but yeah, no, that happened. Guys, and Jay Lee says for $5, I'll let Jay Lee have the final comment of the day and we'll close shop on this. All he really cares about is Arch better than Quinn consistently. It kind of feels like everything else will take care of itself. If so, Jay, I 1,000% agree with you. I've said, if you tell me right now, Arch Manning statistics for this season, and only Arch Manning statistics for this season, I can tell you what the Texas season is going to look like. Simple as that. And if he's better than Quinn Ewers last season, they'll play for a national championship.
Well, do you have any? So can you throw a number out there if he does this and like passing yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and they're playing for the
if he's Will Howard good next year, so a 170 quarterback rating, that's not going to win you the Heisman, but that's a significant improvement. And what that's really a significant improvement in, every week your floor is substantially higher than what your floor is when you finish the season with like a 150 quarterback rating. The problem with a 150 quarterback rating is there are too many games in the 130s that get you to 150. It's not every week you're playing at 150. It's too many games you're at 170, and then there are games that draw that down and make that the mean number. Mm-hmm. If you're at 170, you're playing games above 170, and typically your floors are the old average games. Mm-hmm. If the floor is pretty much a median level Quinn Ewers performance, if that's the floor, is kind of typically what you would actually get from Quinn, and everything else is a ceiling, like Texas will go further. They'll at least go to the semifinals, and then it really does come down to matchups. It comes down to who's healthy when at that time of the year when those games take place. We'll always say that the two last great opportunities at Texas have really had to win a national championship. Last year, they're in the biggest game of the season and they don't have a healthy Matthew Golden or Isaiah Bond. That game plays different if Ohio State's, if the receiver injuries are flipped and Ohio State's missing Jeremiah Smith and pick any of those other guys, and Texas has Golden and Bond, they win that game. Like that subtle shift flips that game on its head. And even though Texas kept Jeremiah Smith completely in lock, it changes everything about the way they are able to play that day. If they just aren't on the field, they're not healthy. And then Texas loses a national championship to Alabama because in the game, Colt McCoy gets injured. Like Texas is going to get to a point where that's how seasons get defined, on these odd little either breaks that go your way or don't. And the last couple of times they've been there, they haven't. I don't really include I didn't think they were better than Washington when it was all said and done, having seen those two teams play each other. And they certainly weren't better than Michigan. So I will, however long I live, you'll never be able to convince me that Texas would have beaten that Michigan team. I don't know that they would have stayed within 2 touchdowns of them. I shudder to think what Quinn would have looked like against that national championship defense when they were in their absolute pump and peak.
Yeah, but just like I know we gotta get out, but one final thing, it's like I just keep thinking. I think about that Ohio State game, the Ohio State semifinal game, and I'll always think, man, what if they didn't rush Cam Williams back and they played Trevor Gooseby? Does the Jack Sawyer thing ever even happen? What if the defense just doesn't have the total meltdown right there at the end of the half with the dump off pass to Travion Henderson? It's like these little defining moments like that. That's
every competitive game, though, Alex. You could do that with every competitive
when game. When teams are even, which Texas and Ohio State were roughly even, give or take a smidge talent advantage that Ohio State had. Like that's what defines games. And more times than not, the better team, which usually has the better players, a few more, if even just a couple, like that ends up winning the day. Ohio State, in the biggest plays of the season, they just had their players take advantage of guys that were hurt in key moments. Yeah, man, that's what losers do, man. When you lose those games, you bemoan.
Yeah.
What if Neil O'Donnell didn't throw 4 interceptions, right, Catch?
What if Larry Brown just doesn't stand in the zone and wait for the ball?
I'm
to come
still
to it,
mad about that. So, yeah.
But I mean, if you're a Pittsburgh fan, you go, look, those two teams that's a Super Bowl that was there for the taking. And it was like, well, at quarterback, one team had Troy Aikman, who doesn't make those throws. And one team had Neil O'Donnell, who
didn't make those throws until that game, by the way.
But he had it in him. He had it in him.
Yeah.
And, it's like, and then you spend the entire rest of your life saying he hadn't done that all season. How did that happen in that moment? And it's like, well, was Neil O'Donnell a Hall of Famer? I was like, well, no. I was like, well, that's why that happened, because those moments swallow guys up. And you know what? It's why the Trevor Gooseby question is such a good one, Alex, because Cam wasn't right. And it's easy to know why they went with Cam, because in that moment they wanted their best, what they thought were their best players on the field. But I think 95% of Gooseby was better than whatever percent of, and in the end, like, I just had a hard time thinking of Gooseby as that guy's an NFL player. I think they thought he's only played.
He's a kid.
90 snaps and he's going up against Jack Sawyer, and we don't want that to define the game. But I think, a couple of months later, they're like, oh yeah, no, he's our best lineman. It's like 3 months ago, you didn't trust him enough to play healthy versus an injured Cam Williams, who the NFL ends up telling us, you know what, you probably shouldn't have even cared that much about Cam Williams. He wasn't that good. So it's interesting that in such a short time, look, Sark won't tamper down the Arch Manning hype at all. What he'll say is, it's kind of unfortunate that a guy like that has to deal with all the hype, but that's what comes with being him. But he won't say, guys, slow down. It's a process. Everybody, Heisman favorite. Woo, let's let him play a couple of, like, he's not doing that. And, but a couple of months ago, he wasn't willing to play him instead of Quinn, a guy that the NFL again told us, oh, I don't know how committed you should have been to him in retrospect. We just evaluated him. We're taking guys from North Dakota State over him, just so you know. And no offense to North Dakota State, they win a lot of games. So I don't know. Like, it's interesting. Just it's the thing that I can't lose sight of. It's like, hey, 4 months ago, we said some of these offensive linemen sucked, and now they don't. Like Cole Hudson, we're now saying he's good, and it's like Neto couldn't play. We're now saying he's good 4 months later. Great offseason. He's good, and we start doing all of these things, and ultimately it comes down to, yep, we're giving benefits of the doubt in June that we weren't giving in January, and that part makes me queasy, I guess. But Arch we all trust, right?
Yep. And in the computers, I guess.
I hate that I'm computer brained, because it all I saw those and I went, oh yeah, that looks like the data that I put together. No, wait a minute. No, I don't. It's scary. All right, guys, let's wrap this up. Like, comment, subscribe to the page. I enjoyed the conversation. It was good to be back on a podcast. It's been too long. Thanks to Specs for being the sponsor of the chat. Thanks to Daily and Black for being this title sponsor of the show. I regret that somehow I lost sight of the. That's why I missed Chad today, because I usually let Chad pull up the graphics and stuff. I did it today, and the studio sucks. And nevertheless, for myself and for Jason and for Alex and for Cody, who I promise you had better studio situations than I was working with today, when for about a minute there, just random show graphics were popping up. It was fantastic. My favorite part of the week, I promise you. Have a great rest of the week. We enjoyed it. It was a fun show. We'll do it again in a week. We'll do another modcast on Tuesday. Until then, you guys have a great rest of the day. Later.